Next asset, when employees interact with your company's social media pages, your company starts to get a personal feel to it. And again, I'll use Pivot as an example here. We decided when the Pivot Facebook page was first launched a little over a year ago, we decided that although I would be the administrator, Dave and Mark would chime in fairly regularly just to say things. Now, of course, when I post as an administrator, it shows as posting from Pivot Group. But when Mark and Dave post, they're posting as themselves as individuals. And what that does is it helps people just to see that we are a company of real people with real faces, and who are sharing things and showing some of our real personality. And so this can just help people get to know the personalities at your company when people from your company are interacting as individuals with your company page. So those are the assets, and now we'll move into some boundaries. And you'll notice that this list will be a little bit longer than the list of assets, which mostly has to do with the fact that when companies err in one direction or the other, it's usually in the direction of too much interaction between the personal and business when it comes to social media. So first, think really carefully about friending or following your fellow employees. And particularly, this goes for employees who you have some sort of management authority over. In general, it's not a good idea to friend your subordinates because there's a power relationship there. If you friend them, they will feel like they're probably expected to accept that friend request, which they may not want to do because they may want to keep, and this is obviously I'm talking in terms of Facebook here, they may want to keep that a more private space for themselves. If they want to friend you, then you can choose to accept or not, but you should give employees the freedom to determine if they want to have their own personal social media space, and one that they don't need to worry about, oh, did my boss just see what I wrote? And we've all heard, we all heard the stories that make us chuckle, and I suspect probably make us a little bit nervous too about inappropriate things people have said on social media that have gotten them fired or gotten their companies in trouble, all sorts of things. So, this is one way to just be aware of that issue and to avoid a problem from happening. Again, it mostly applies to Facebook, but it does apply some to Twitter as well. LinkedIn is more acceptable, as I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But again, even then, it's probably something you should let them initiate. And the same, point number 2 here, the same goes for friending and following customers. On LinkedIn and Twitter, this is not going to be as big of a deal. But on Facebook, really, the rule should be that you don't send your customers friend requests. And you should even think carefully about whether or not to accept friend requests from customers. The question to ask yourself is whether you want your customers to know every personal detail you share on Facebook and whether you want to see their personal details, and whether that's going to truly be an asset to your business. Remember that in many, if not most cases, people are really your customers before they are actually your friends. That may sound heartless, it may sound Machiavellian, but I really think it's just a wise choice to make from a professional point of view when it comes to social media. And one of the big reasons I'm talking about number 1 and number 2 here is because of number 3, defriending and unfollowing. What happens when your customers' Facebook posts become so inappropriate that you don't want to see them anymore? Or worse yet, when they're suddenly unhappy with your company and they start posting to your wall about it or tweeting about it or in some way trying to sort of sabotage you personally on social media. Or what happens when your employee leaves and goes to work for your competitor down the road? At some point, you may find yourself in the bad position of defriending or unfollowing a customer or an employee, which is not the end of the world, but it will cause a headache in one way or another. And so again, that's just why you need to be careful about mixing your professional with your personal when it comes to social media. Another boundary issue, there are some privacy concerns to think about if you're letting customers friend you, particularly when it comes to Facebook. And that's also a problem for your customers if your company is set up as an individual, and I'll say more about that in just a minute here. An issue I've talked about before, number 5 here, is who speaks for your company. This is a conversation that really needs to happen at your workplace to define what people should and shouldn't be saying about your company when it comes to social media. A reminder here that a few months back I put together a social media policy, sort of a template for companies. I'm happy to send that to anybody who might want it in case you're thinking of implementing a social media policy. But one of the things it does address in there is, who should and shouldn't be speaking in an official capacity for your company when it comes to social media. If your employees are going to be talking about their job on their social media pages, on their, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or wherever, they need to be very clear about whether they're talking in an official capacity, and they just need to be clear in general about sort of what they're saying about the company overall. So anyway, we do have that social media policy document if you need it. You just send me an email about it. And repeating a point I've talked about before, company pages really must be set up correctly. When you ask people to connect to you as a friend on Facebook, you're creating an inappropriate relationship and asking them to do something that they really shouldn't have to do there. An example that I had recently in my own Facebook account, somebody has posted or has created a Facebook profile, an individual profile for my high school. It's called Grant High Generals, and that is the name of somebody. And that whoever is behind that account is going around friending basically every Grant alumnus that they can. The reason that is a problem is that once you're connected via a friend relationship as opposed to liking a company on Facebook, then you have access to all of the personal information that person has gotten. So I refused that friend request because I was a little nervous about who might be behind that. It could be anybody setting up a Facebook page with the name of my high school, and then when they're set up as a friend instead of as a company page, once I accept their friend request, then they're able to see all of the personal information that I've ever posted on Facebook. So, if you're set up as an individual on Facebook, it means that you're asking people to really give you access to a whole bunch of information that you really don't need as a company. So that's the assets and the boundaries, and now I'll just talk about a few takeaways here. First of all, I hope it's clear from all of this that your social media public persona just requires some careful thought. You just need to really give some thought to how you do this. Probably many of us are already sort of knee-deep into these issues, and so just think about how you as an individual are going to have interactions with your company or talk about your company online, and what your company's policy is going to be in terms of friending customers and that sort of thing. Just give this all some careful thought. The second takeaway is that if you do connect with customers on social media, let them take the lead. And remember that is also a big if you connect with customers, because you don't necessarily have to. It really is okay to tell your customers that in the interest of professional boundaries, you don't think you should be Facebook friends with them. You're flattered that they would want to connect with you that way, but ultimately the answer is no. But if you do connect with them, do let them take the lead and not be the one to send out those friend requests yourself. A third takeaway, be concerned about privacy, your own privacy as well as your customers' privacies. Know the issues, but don't let it be an impediment to what you're doing with social media. Don't let it stop you from getting out there and interacting with people in a fun way, in a personal way, and really building those relationships. My take on privacy when it comes to social media is that people in general are, I think, a little more worried than they need to be when it comes to privacy. Yes, you are sharing a lot of information when it comes to sites like Facebook, and yes, if you're not careful about how you share that information, there is a small chance that it could get into the wrong hands. But I don't think it's something you need to be afraid of, privacy, when it comes to social media. So just know your settings, particularly, again, when it comes to Facebook, and then sort of go boldly forward from there. Another takeaway, ultimately the best place to make a one-on-one connection with a customer is not Facebook, but LinkedIn. LinkedIn works like Facebook in that one person suggests that you connect on LinkedIn and then the other person affirms it, so it is a two-way connection. But LinkedIn is much more, it's meant for professional networking in a way that Facebook is not. Facebook is really intended more for people you know through your personal social circles. So just remember that LinkedIn is the place to be connecting to customers and employees for that matter. And finally, takeaway number 5, I just can't stress this enough. If your company is set up as an individual profile on Facebook right now, you really should change it. It will be a process. It does mean that you're going to have to contact all of the people you're connected to and let them know that you're changing and that, please go over and like our company page. There's no way you can force them to. Facebook still has not allowed for an automatic way to transfer from an individual profile to a company page. But really, you really should change it because you don't want to be asking people for to have to friend you, to have to give up all their personal information to you on Facebook. And also, you just don't want to look like you don't know what you're doing when it comes to social media. There is a place for companies on Facebook, and that is as a company page, not as an individual profile. So that's what I have in terms of takeaways. There are a couple of questions here, and if you have any more questions, do feel free to fill them into the questions bar. There is a question here. What would you suggest doing if you find an employee posting incorrect or negative things about your company? Can we take disciplinary action since it's really just their private network? That's a really good question, and I don't know all of the sort of legal ramifications behind that. I think, I know that courts in the United States have upheld an employee's right to say what they want to about their company. In terms of, free speech, there was a case not so long ago where a woman was fired for things that she had said about her company online, and then they reversed it and they said, no, you can't fire her because of that. It's an issue of free speech. She should be able to say that. Now, what you can do, again, is set policies and try to guide people in the right direction. Ultimately, if you have an employee who's posting negative things about your company, probably you have a bigger concern to deal with than what their friends are thinking about that online. Probably you need to deal with the disgruntledness, not so much the public social media-ness of it. There's another question here about when Google Plus will be available to everyone, or is it by invitation only, as Gmail has been. I don't know yet when Google Plus is available. It is, again, in beta testing right now. I imagine, like most things with Google, it's going to be in beta testing for a couple of months, and then we'll see it roll out to users. I wouldn't be surprised if it starts out as an invitation-only kind of thing. That sort of, is one natural way to roll out a social media network. But I just don't know the answer to that. So we'll wait and see, and we'll let you know on a future webinar. So that's all I have for today. Thank you for joining us on today's webinar. The slides will be available on our Facebook page in just a little while here, and you can see the address for that on this slide. You can also register for our next Straight Talk webinar there. The next Straight Talk on Social Media webinar is actually going to be 4 weeks from now instead of 2 weeks on July 29th. And our focus will be understanding Facebook contests. There's a great study that's just come out about Facebook contests, dealing some of the rules, and so I'm going to go into that in some detail just to talk about how to navigate those waters, because if you don't do it correctly, Facebook actually does take disciplinary action or at least reserves the right to do so. So that'll be 4 weeks from now on July 29th. And for our telco customers, or clients, there's Straight Talk on Telco Marketing webinar this coming Wednesday, July 6th at 11 o'clock. You can see my email there and Dave's email if you have any questions for either of us. Otherwise, that's it for me for today. Have a great 3-day weekend. Remember to keep your media social and your talk straight.